Greetings, my dear viewer. You're watching The Price of Cheating, a channel dedicated to those who value traditional family principles and stand firmly against adultery. If that resonates with you, don't forget to subscribe. Let's dive right into today's story. Ben sat across from Grace in their familiar, cozy Italian restaurant. The soft flicker of candlelight and the gentle strains of background music typically lent the place a calming charm, a reprieve from their hectic lives. But tonight, the atmosphere felt stifling, the warmth of the surroundings doing little to dispel the tension lingering between them. Grace's fingers fidgeted with the edge of her napkin, her gaze darting restlessly around the room as though she couldn't bear to meet Ben's eyes. Ben, having spent years deciphering her moods, recognized the signs immediately. Something was off. Finally, Grace looked at him, her expression fraught with hesitance and a hint of nervous energy. "I've been thinking," she began, her tone deliberately controlled yet carrying an undertone of anticipation. "Maybe we should try something new to rekindle the spark." Ben blinked, caught off guard. He managed a light chuckle, masking the unease bubbling within him. "Something new?" he repeated, probing cautiously. "What do you mean, Grace?" She hesitated, then drew a deep breath, seemingly steeling herself. "What if we gave each other a free pass? Just for one night. No strings attached, no judgment. A chance to explore something different," she suggested, her voice laced with an unsettling mixture of excitement and nonchalance. Her words lingered in the air like an ominous cloud. Ben's mind raced to absorb the implication. "Are you saying you want to be with someone else?" he asked, his voice calm, though his chest tightened with dread. "Not forever," she responded, her tone almost breezy, as if the suggestion were perfectly ordinary. "Just once. Nothing serious." She offered a light laugh, trying to downplay the gravity of her words, but it only deepened the sting. Ben studied her closely, searching her face for any sign of doubt or remorse. Instead, what he saw shook him, a glint of eagerness, the kind of spark she once reserved for him. The realization landed like a blow to the chest, but Ben kept his composure. "If that's what you really want," he replied quietly, "we can discuss it more at home." The rest of the evening dragged on in an oppressive silence. Grace, seemingly relieved at having broached the topic, acted as though she had achieved a victory. Meanwhile, Ben's thoughts churned darkly, his mind spiraling into places far bleaker than hers. That night, as Grace slept peacefully beside him, Ben lay wide awake, his eyes fixed on the ceiling. Her proposal replayed in his mind over and over, each repetition cutting deeper. What had happened to the years of trust, devotion, and sacrifice? All of it felt trivialized by her flippant suggestion. Unable to endure the torment alone, Ben reached for his phone and texted Rick, his closest confidant. Minutes later, Rick called. "Ben, what's going on? You sound off," he said, his voice laced with concern. Ben recounted the evening's events, his words tinged with disbelief and hurt. Rick listened quietly before offering steady, firm advice. "This isn't about you, Ben. It's about her crossing a line. If you decide to handle this, do it with a clear head. I'll back you no matter what." Ben nodded silently, his friend's words resonating deeply. "I'll give her what she wants," he said after a pause. "But it'll be on my terms." In the days that followed, Grace's demeanor shifted. She seemed lighter, even cheerful, mistaking Ben's outward calmness for tacit approval. She grew more affectionate, but there was an unmistakable undercurrent of anticipation, a thrill she didn't bother hiding. Meanwhile, Ben was laying the foundation for his next steps. One evening, he broached the subject with calculated ease. "So," he asked casually, "any idea who you'd use your pass on?" Grace's eyes widened momentarily before she quickly masked her reaction with a nervous laugh. "No, no one in particular. I just thought it'd be fun for us. Don't you ever feel bored?" Ben's anger flared, but he forced it down, his tone remaining neutral. "Bored? Not really. But if that's how you feel, I understand. While Grace dreamed of freedom, Ben discreetly consulted a lawyer, ensuring his finances were secure and drafting preliminary separation documents. He moved personal items to Rick's house under the guise of decluttering, each step a calculated measure to protect himself. When Grace finally announced the night she planned to use her pass, Ben remained composed. "Have fun," he said, his voice calm, betraying none of the storm raging inside him. As she stepped out, dressed to perfection and brimming with excitement, Ben's resolve hardened. Her choice was made, and he wouldn't let it go unanswered. Hours passed in excruciating silence. Ben poured himself a drink, his eyes scanning the once familiar home now tainted by her betrayal. Memories that once brought him solace now felt like shards of glass, cutting deep into his soul. Just before dawn, Grace returned. Her disheveled appearance, smeared makeup, untidy hair, spoke volumes. Ben greeted her with unsettling calm, his anguish masked behind an indifferent expression. "I hope it gave you what you were looking for," he said quietly. "I hope it was worth it." The following morning, over coffee, Ben broke the silence. "So," he asked, his tone deceptively light, "did you enjoy your little free pass?" Grace dismissed his question with a nervous laugh. "Ben, it was a one-time thing. Don't blow it out of proportion. We're still us, aren't we?" His composure finally cracked. "Are we?" he countered, his voice heavy with the weight of years of unspoken sacrifices. Rising to his feet, he let his anger surface. "Do you have any idea what I've given up for us, Grace? How much I've invested in this marriage? And you threw it all away for one night of so-called freedom?" Grace sat in stunned silence as Ben delivered his final words. "You wanted space. Fine. Enjoy it. Because now, I will too." In the days that followed, Ben retreated into an eerie, deliberate silence. He became a mere presence in their shared home, his quietness intentional and calculated. Behind the scenes, he meticulously prepared, organizing finances, arranging documents, and finding clarity amid the turmoil. When everything was in place, he invited Grace to dinner at the same Italian restaurant where she had first introduced the idea of her free pass. As they sat across from one another, Ben slid a folded document toward her across the table. "This is for you," he said, his voice steady but carrying an unmistakable edge of finality. "Consider it my answer to your quest for freedom." Grace unfolded the paper, her face paling as she took in the separation agreement. "Ben, this isn't what I wanted," she stammered, her voice shaky. "I just wanted to bring some excitement back into our relationship. I still love you." His gaze remained firm, cold, and unyielding. "Love and loyalty aren't optional, Grace. They aren't conveniences you can set aside and pick up later. You wanted freedom, and now I'm giving it to you. This is your last, free pass from me." Without waiting for a response, Ben stood and left the table, leaving Grace sitting there, clutching the document with trembling hands. For the first time in months, he felt a measure of relief. The pain lingered, but it was tempered by the certainty that he was finally moving forward. Yet, he knew this was just the beginning of the reckoning. In the weeks that followed, Grace relentlessly tried to reconcile. Her tear-filled voicemails, endless texts, and desperate pleas explained that her night of freedom had meant nothing and was entirely harmless. Ben listened to every word without responding, his silence reflecting the emptiness her choices had created. Each attempt at reconciliation was met with the same unyielding indifference. Eventually, Ben packed his belongings and moved out, taking up temporary residence at his friend Rick's apartment. For Grace, his absence was devastating, leaving her to face the hollow remnants of their life together. Alone in their shared home, she spiraled into regret, desperately clinging to fragments of a relationship she had destroyed. Meanwhile, Ben worked quietly and methodically toward the next phase of his plan. Regret, he decided, wasn't enough. Grace needed to feel the weight of her betrayal and fully grasp the depth of her actions. She needed to understand the pain she had caused. One evening, while discussing his plan with Rick, his friend voiced a cautious concern. "Are you sure about this, Ben? Is this really the path you want to take?" Ben's response was resolute, his conviction unwavering. "She treated my trust like it was disposable. She needs to feel what it's like to be cast aside, to have her loyalty questioned, to understand her worth being diminished. She has to experience what she put me through." Rick hesitated but eventually nodded, recognizing the determination in Ben's voice. "I'm here for you, no matter what." The very next day, Ben set his plan into motion. Knowing Grace's circle well, he carefully identified which friends thrived on spreading gossip and ensured that his carefully chosen words would reach her. Casually, he spoke to mutual acquaintances, subtly mentioning that he was moving forward and looking for someone who valued loyalty. His carefully planted remarks spread quickly, laced with just enough intrigue to stoke curiosity. It wasn't long before Grace caught wind of the whispers. Consumed by jealousy, dread, and curiosity, she was forced to confront the idea that Ben might genuinely be moving on. That evening, Ben returned to find his phone flooded with frantic messages from Grace. Each one was more desperate than the last. "Ben, we need to talk. Are you seeing someone? I have to know. I made a mistake, but we can fix this. Please call me." Ben read every word but remained silent, letting her stew in the uncertainty she had created. Then he executed the final step of his plan, a poignant post on social media. Expressing gratitude for a fresh start, he implied he had found someone who shared his values of trust and commitment. The message was deliberate, leaving no room for doubt. Grace's response was immediate. She bombarded him with calls, her voice trembling in desperation. In the voicemail she left, her panic was palpable. When Ben finally picked up the phone, Grace's voice cracked. "Ben, is it true? Are you really with someone else?" "Why does it matter to you?" he replied evenly. "You're the one who wanted freedom, remember?" "That's not what I meant," she cried, her panic intensifying. "I thought we could still be us. I made a mistake, Ben. Please, I see that now. Just come back to me." After a long silence, Ben's voice was calm but unyielding. "No, Grace. This was your choice. I offered you my loyalty and commitment, but you threw it away. Now you'll have to live with that decision." In the weeks that followed, Ben systematically dismantled the life they had built together. He contacted a real estate agent to sell their home, each step a symbolic move toward healing. For Grace, every action served as a painful reminder of what she had lost. Finally, Ben agreed to meet her one last time. He chose the same Italian restaurant where she had first suggested the free pass. This time, there was no warmth, no shared fondness, only the cold remnants of a broken relationship. Grace arrived looking worn and frail, her face bearing the marks of sleepless nights. She sat across from Ben, her hands trembling as she avoided his gaze. "Ben," she began softly, her voice strained, "I know I hurt you. I thought freedom would make me feel alive again, that I could come back like nothing had changed. But I was wrong. I lost sight of what we had, and now I know I'll never find it again." Ben's expression remained unreadable as he listened. When he finally spoke, his tone was calm but firm. "Grace, you didn't just ask for a night off when you wanted that free pass. You destroyed the foundation of everything we built together. You traded our life for a fleeting moment, something you valued more than us. Over these weeks, I let you sit with the silence of your choices. Now I'm done." Tears streamed down Grace's face as she reached across the table, grasping for his hand. "Please, Ben. Don't do this. I'll do anything to make it right. Just give me one more chance." Ben shook his head, unmoved. "You had your chance, Grace. You wanted a free pass, and now you have it, a free pass to move on without me." With that, he stood and walked away, leaving her alone in the restaurant, the weight of her choices crushing down on her. As Ben stepped into the cool night air, a mix of relief and melancholy washed over him. He had given Grace every opportunity to honor his trust, but she had made her choice. Now he was making his. For the first time since the devastating night that fractured their relationship, Ben felt whole again. Walking away, he left the burden of betrayal behind, replacing it with a sense of freedom and hope for what lay ahead.